Club Penguin gets acquired by Disney. What happened there?
Well, that was actually super fun. So one of the things that the game was growing quite quickly. Um, but to take it to kind of the next level, we needed help.
Let's go. Hey, welcome to Building Bigfoot. This is the podcast where we dive deep into building an entrepreneurial business. If you are a self-employed person and you're building a business, you know that it takes a lot to build a business sometimes, and sometimes it works out great, and sometimes there's really interesting challenges along the road, and you have to be wise and smart with what you do. And if you raise a lot of money and you build a big business and it's successful, that's great. That's called a unicorn. But what's it called if you are self-funding your business and it's a success? It's got to be something else. It's a Bigfoot. And that's why we're building Bigfoots. So I'd like to welcome Troy Mack, my dear friend, amazing guy. And I deeply appreciate Troy. And I also look up to him a lot in so many different areas. And one of the things that Troy has is a very, very cool and interesting background. And so before I connected with him, he actually started with a really cool company called Club Penguin. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe your kids have played the game. And then that became Disney. And then he worked at Disney for a long time. And so we're going to dive a little bit into Troy's story. And there will be nuggets here for anyone. And so I'm excited to dive into it and learn a little bit from who this incredible character is. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Troy.
Hi. I like how you say character.
Yeah.
We're all characters.
We're all characters. So tell me a little bit of So why don't you dive into maybe take yourself back to the early days of Club Penguin? Like what was happening? What is Club Penguin, and how did you get involved?
All right. Well, Club Penguin is a online chat for kids. Basically, if anybody had ever used Flash in the way back in the days when the internet was maybe more cool than it is now, we had this little platform where you could run around as a little penguin, little two-dimensional penguin on a screen, and you could interact with other kids and via chat, and your little penguin would have a little chat bubble above it. Really, that platform was created to give a safe place for kids online, and it really took off. And being a very unique kind of product at the time, because most kids, they wanted to be online, but within 2 clicks, any kid can easily get into something that you don't want them on. And so this was created to be a safe place. There was no links outside of the game to anything. We had filters on the chat, so kids couldn't, type in their address or their phone number or swear or any of those things. And the fun part is if they tried any of those things on their screen, it would look like the chat went through, but on somebody else's screen, it didn't go through. So it gave this illusion that they're able to chat and say everything they want, but we protected them from first off, protected the community, and also protected them from being exposed online from predators and that sort of thing. But so kids would put in things that they think they're able to put in, and then they're just wondering why nobody's responding. That's because nobody else is seeing it. So it was kind of fun, but it really took off because it became this unique, like, sandbox sort of place where kids could actually interact. They would have their own igloos that they could decorate with all sorts of furniture items and different things like that. So it really became this place that they could call their own and they could share with others. And that's kind of, it just had this explosive impact. And I think it really hit at a really good time in the internet. Before we had the iPhone and all the apps and all that stuff, it was primarily just being on a computer.
Oh, it's so cool. And then how did you get involved with that?
Well, the story is I was doing freelance art, and My wife actually worked for the company that created Club Penguin. At the time was New Horizon. She was working as a web developer. She actually would come home with a few little illustration pieces that she wasn't sure how to do, so she gave them to me. So I quickly did them for her, and I knew it was this game that they were working on that they released, and I saw the value in it. And I, at the time, was a little burnt out from freelance work because it was a lot of feast and famine. And you get a big project, you don't sleep for days on end, and then because you were doing that and weren't marketing, then of course there was nothing coming down the pipeline. So I was a little tired of that whole thing. I was looking for something a little bit more stable. Um, I saw what they had, and I knew that they were wanting to grow, and so I actually asked if they were in need of any illustrators at the time. And at the time, they didn't, but they were hiring for customer support. And so my thought was that, okay, well, I'll work in customer support, and then at least my foot's in the door in case anything should happen. And I remember even on my interview being asked if that's really what I want to do, because there's no guarantee that they could ever hire me as an artist. And so I did that, and within 2 weeks, we just had explosive growth. That they were like, "Hey, we need you to do some, we need you to do some illustration here." Now it's up full time, but and so I did that, and actually it was probably within, I would say, 6 weeks I was full time illustration and working that. So my little gamble worked out well, but it was definitely an interesting time because you know at the time they couldn't even afford to actually even have a computer for me to work on. So I actually brought my own computer from home just so I could do illustration for the company there. So it was kind of, talk about bootstrap and making things work.
It's so interesting because when you are early on in a team, especially a team where like that, where you can see that there's going to be growth, you do get new opportunities pretty quickly, and it's very exciting. And I would say you are somebody who is incredibly faithful with what you have in front of you, and you do it at a 10 out of 10 level. Like you really take pride in no matter what you're doing, and so I can see why you would be given new opportunities immediately. It just makes sense. So then, and what also is kind of neat thinking about this is Club Penguin was self-funded. So this wasn't a big, hey, we're gonna like nobody knew this was gonna happen. So they didn't go and raise a ton of money, and it was really, so maybe you could describe like who were the founders of Club Penguin, and what were they trying to do? Like why did they why were they building this thing?
Well, basically, they were always described as three dads who cared for kids online. And so we had Lance Preeb, we had Lane Merrifield, and Dave Crisco. Dave was the owner of New Horizons at the time, the web development company, and Lane did was primarily their sales, and then Lance was I would say the brain behind everything, and he did a lot of the development for it. And um, he was actually working and doing these games on the side, and Dave kind of got wind of what he was working on, and basically between the three of them, they felt that they could actually make it into something big. And so that's kind of how they brought it in. And now Lance wasn't working on it just on the side; he was working on this chat on like full time, putting all his effort into it to grow it into something there. And it really do, like, I can't stress enough that the idea that it is a safe place for kids online was always a huge driver behind that. It was um, right from like the customer support areas. It was always very this very caring, wanting to make sure that these kids were having fun, that they were safe, and are safe. And we have tons of stories kind of based around that. So that was like Early on, that culture was established very, very deeply, and just this like genuine care for what you would call your clients. I mean, these are kids, but essentially they are your customers, and but really just making sure that they're having the best experience, right? Whether it's playing the game or whether it's interacting with customer support. And like we would literally have fun with these kids if they wrote in, because they'd write in about all sorts of things. So we'd engage with them on the level that they're at, and even some of us got known because we'd have our little online penguin as well, and we'd have our own names, and we would get known, right? They're like, oh, that's Nanu, or that's so and so online. So they get excited because you usually sign. If you responded, you'd sign with your penguin name as well as your regular name, right? So it was always it was kind of fun, and in so much so that we, I would say, for lack of better word, got in trouble with other companies at the time, because we had a basically a mandate that we try to respond to every single email that a kid wrote in within 24 to 48 hours. And at the time, with customer support in general in the industry, that was unheard of, especially with like the volume and the things that we would get in, because it wouldn't be like problems with the product. It would just be like they were excited and they wanted to express their excitement, or they had questions about a certain, I don't know, game in there, or how do you access this, or when's Rockhopper, the pirate, going to be coming back again, or like just like things that you wouldn't necessarily think were really important, but they were important to the kid. And so it was always really important that we'd respond, and that's where we got in a little bit of trouble with the industry, because we actually got threats from other companies. I won't name any, but basically saying, "How dare you respond to kids, that quickly?" And we always thought it's that experience. It's that they're our guests, and we got to serve them and make them happy. So that was always pervasive, very much within the culture, and I think it's really what helped the product explode the way it did.
Yeah, so that's so really putting the needs of your customers first, going above and beyond, and not even questioning that that was just the way you were going to do things, even though it wasn't the standard or normal at the time in the industry. That's Yeah, I think that kind of speaks a little bit to the way Club Penguin did a lot of things. Uh, Even as the company is bootstrapped, it's self-funded, it's growing quickly. I think they were donating to different causes, like right from day one.
Yep, yep. 10% of all profits were being donated out, back into the community around the world, building schools, all that sort of thing. And in fact, as the product um, matured, we actually had events where we got the kids actually involved. So every Christmas, we'd have this event called Coins for Change, and in the game, the kids could play little video games in there, and they could earn coins, which they could usually use to buy furniture items for their igloos, or clothing items for their penguin, um, and various different things like that. But around December, we'd run this really fun online event, and we'd decorate the island with all sorts of decorations for Christmas and all that stuff. And we'd have a number of causes that the company was supporting, and the kids could actually vote with their coins where that money would get allocated, and how, like, basically what percentage would go to this charity and to this charity and to this charity. And the kids would, like, they got right into it, and they would go and they'd play games and earn as many coins as they can, and give away like tons and tons and tons and tons of these coins, which they could have spent um, on items for their for their avatar and all that stuff. But it was really, really neat to see how they rallied behind that. And I think they really kind of learned valuable lessons in being generous. And that was always kind of a very special moment. And then even from the company perspective, we loved seeing that. And it what we got to do too was, after the event, of course, all this money was going to get allocated to these charities. We For anybody who wanted to, the lady that was in charge of that, who was going to tell these charities like how much they were getting from us, and they didn't know. They actually, some of these charities didn't even know who we were, or that they were going to get money. So she would do like these open phone calls where everybody could listen in. So as staff, we would sit there and we'd hear, she'd phone up the charity and be like, hey, this is so and so from Club Penguin, and we just want to let you know that we have this amount of money coming towards your charity. And so it was kind of a very special moment, because you could hear in their voice like the tears and the joy and all that stuff. So it was very much something that could contribute back into the world. So not only, and for me that was a big thing working there, was not only were we keeping kids safe online, um, but we were also contributing to the world in a significant way. So it was, we're not just building a video game, we're actually improving the world as we go and making impact. Even too, like on that customer support side, as I mentioned, it sent ripple effects out into the industry as a whole, because we were doing that, they had to do that. So as a whole, you're seeing better customer support. And so those things, it, it's amazing how you could just be working on something that seems, like, well, it's just a little penguin, or I'm just drawing something, or we're just creating a video game, but it actually has significant impact within the world at large. So that was a very, very cool thing.
I think it even got mentioned at the Oscars.
Did it? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I believe, yeah, Club Penguin got mentioned at the Oscars. It's, it's pretty cool, and actually it took note, Steve Jobs actually was interested in Club Penguin and what was happening, and what you guys are doing, which is like really cool. So when you look back and you think about it, uh, growing a team that fast, that big, there's going to be challenges, and something about your company was really proactive and very positive. What were some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you then overcome them?
Um, well, challenges. I would say the biggest challenge is we had more ideas than we had time or effort to be able to put into it. Um, so that was, and that was just kind of a learning on how we can space that out, how we plan for it, how we allocate um, different resources in those things. Obviously, scaling is was also a significant endeavor, because it was scale on so many different levels, not just like staff wise, but also building wise, and where do you put all these people, and your servers, the amount of servers you'd have to add in, because more and more kids are coming in there, and then also being a you know you've also got your competition. We had a lot of competition at that time. We weren't the only product out there that was catering towards kids online. There was things such as Neopets and in that, and I think the best way we could always overcome it was just our genuine enthusiasm for the product itself. We were like literally kids ourselves. Um, a portion of your For most people, a portion of the day they would actually just go on and play and spend time with the kids, just so that you're in there doing it yourself. And I think that you have like this like love for what you do and why you do it, and when you're in there, and so that helps to overcome a lot of obstacles that you can have. And so we pushed the boundaries with the flash technology. There was some limitations in what it can do, but we got creative in how we did things. Um, even at the time, to when we first got started, it kind of changed as we went, but like bandwidth with this was incredibly expensive. Um, so y- Optimizing everything was like, a big thing. I remember when I first started that we had a little newspaper for the kids, like in the game, and basically we always tried to keep it under 100K as far as the size of the file in there, because you make it bigger, then of course more kids are downloading it. It's going to cost us some bandwidth, which costs you in real dollars. Like I said, nowadays that's not as much of an issue anymore, but it was a very real thing. So you save 10K on a little tiny file, you could be saving tens of thousands of dollars. But yeah, I remember like very clearly when we got to a point where we're putting so much into that newspaper and it was being used a lot. And we had like little crossword games and all sorts of things. It was very much like a real newspaper, but all for this like virtual world. That it was like a very real ask to push beyond the 100K kind of limit and going, okay, well, can we go to 150K, and if we do that, then we can do this and this and this. And so that was kind of fun in that regard, to kind of solve those sort of things and work within the limitations.
No, it's so interesting. I loved Flash, ActionScript. It was so far ahead of its time, and it was incredibly efficient. It was really good at doing the things that it needed to do. Uh, I don't think there's a language today that combines the interface that Flash gave you to develop with, plus the ability to actually write stuff inside of it, that has even come close to what Flash used to be able to do. That's just an aside. That's just a um, but it was a very cool thing, and you could literally build an entire game world using it. Which, like you said, it's very much an edge case of Flash. You were probably breaking everything. So then, fast forward, Flash gets acquired by Disney. What happened there? Not Flash, sorry. Flash does get acquired by Disney, but no, it got acquired by Adobe. Um, so Club Penguin gets acquired by Disney. What happened there?
Well, that was actually super fun. So one of the things that the game was growing quite quickly. Um, but to take it to kind of the next level, we needed help. We needed some expertise. We needed, we need to be able to grow our servers fast. We need to like all these stuff that going in the direction that we were would take a lot of significant time and effort and all that stuff. So that's where it was going to start. They started to shop around looking for somebody who they could partner with and who would be interested in taking it to the next level. So it wasn't just Disney that was well, Disney ultimately acquired Club Penguin, but it was also Sony and a couple of other companies that were interested. And I remember being very much being we would get visitors from these companies, and they'd be toured around and shown the facility, and so that was kind of fun. But the funnest visitor that came was Steven Katzenberg, and as a animation kind of nerd at the time, that was a big deal, right? Like, oh my gosh, this guy's here. He was a lot shorter than I had in my brain, but I actually got to shake his hand and meet them. And at the time, they were working on Surf's Up, and so as part of, I call it the dating experience with these companies, they gave us an advanced showing of that film. It wasn't even finished. Like most of the scenes were done, but some of them hadn't been fully rendered out. So it was like a 3D model that's just like moving. It's not like animated or have the shaders on it. So, but we actually got to watch that movie as a dating experience, and so that was fun. But yeah, ultimately they went with Disney, simply because the values. really aligned. There was a value match there with Disney at the time, and and very much so. And here's the funny thing is that Disney was actually really interested in Club Penguin because they called it the Club Penguin Mojo, and they felt that Club Penguin in many ways was more Disney than Disney itself as far as the culture. So they kind of wanted to. They would actually send people up from Disney to get some of the Club Penguin mojo, so to speak, so that they could bring it back to the rest of the company. So that was actually,
Catch it. Go catch the passion and the heart and soul
yeah,
there.
and which you wouldn't necessarily think that that's what they want. And I felt like very honored that that's how the overall company felt, because when if you've ever been to Disneyland or Disney World, like it's an experience that's like there's really no other experience in the entire world as far as a theme park and the magic that actually goes on there. And so they're wanting to get that mojo from us so that they can infuse it in the rest of the company. It was very interesting. So it was very, very cool.
Yeah, and then so Disney acquires Club Penguin, and then how long did you stay with um, Club Penguin after that?
Myself, I was with Club Penguin total of 9 years, and they were acquired um, within the first year and a half. So I think at the year and a half mark. So yeah, that would have been uh, what was that 7.5 years with Disney. So
Wow, that was a long time you were with
yeah,
Disney.
yeah. My
What was
kids
it
my
about?
kids grew up knowing that mom and dad, because my wife also worked there as well. That mom and dad worked for Disney, so it was always this fun thing. They didn't know that there was anything outside of Disney that you could work for.
That's pretty cool. I think if I worked for Disney, my girls being the age they are, their minds would be blown.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's just Disney movies, the Disney magical
yeah.
princesses. It's that the whole
Uh
everything.
huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lion King. This is still one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just so powerful, that story. So Disney does have a very good job. But working with a company like that, what was it? Excuse me. So working with a company like that, what was it like from within? What was the corporate culture like? What were some of the changes that you witnessed take place as the company matured?
Well, as the company matured, especially growing, but also having the very corporate now feeling and kind of with Disney coming in, there was definitely shifts that happened with that. It was very like in the early days, obviously very startup, very, just do whatever it takes to get it done. Also, like we would take in a lot of ideas from everybody, and so there's a lot of collaboration within the team. A lot of like, who wants to do this? I want to do it, and then they just do it. Um, versus a cultural shift was it started to become more top down kind of decision making, a little bit heavier on the management level of that. So then you're managing like kind of the minutia of some of the stuff. So that was one thing that was um, I found challenging versus just allowing the people that are actually working on the product to really build a product that they love and how they want to do it. But it's kind of like there's always a balance because there is like the business needs and business goals that are in there, right? And so it's very very important to make sure that yeah, okay, you can build something that's like super fun and entertaining, but is it going to increase profits and various different things like that? So
So looking back at that, having had time to reflect on it, what would you prescribe? Could you imagine a world that took the best of the culture of Club Penguin and the best of the culture of Disney? And what would that look like?
um well, I think first off, like really is having that passion and that culture. right? So, and I would say, like in any business, that's really incredible. If you can get that, like a good solid culture, whatever it's going to be built around, that everybody can buy into, that goes a long way, because that's what you're that's what you're doing. It's not like, you're just you have a job. It is, your job actually has value. It has a purpose. It has a, and I think that's what a lot of people want, is they want to have a purpose. Um, and so, first off, from the Club Penguin side, now I do strongly believe that Disney has that as well, right? So you go to Disneyland, and um, everybody's referred to there as a guest, anybody who enters the park, but all of the staff are called cast members. And it's actually something that we kind of started to pull in from Disney, was, considering ourselves as cast members. It doesn't matter who you are. If it's at Disneyland, the janitor is a cast member. He has a part in the theater that you're putting on, for everybody to see. So, um, and and really too, in Penguin and Disney both have this, where you really wanted to delight your guests, right? You wanted to create magical moments for them. So these little things that you wouldn't expect to happen, then they happen. And sometimes those were unexpected as well, right? So you can create things by accident. But I think that's like a really, really big thing, is, delighting your guests, having a really strong purpose and culture. Those are kind of like, keeping those things. And then, like, one of the things that I liked in the early days of Club Penguin was that um, everybody's ideas were valuable, right? So, like, there's not ever like a bad idea. All ideas are good. They just might not have the right timing, right? And so when you do that, then everybody feels valued, right? Everybody has something to bring, and that's a kind of a really big thing, because then people are less afraid to bring their ideas, to try things out, to maybe give it a little bit more. You're like, this week I think I'm going to put in just a few more hours, because I really, really want this particular thing to happen in the game, because I think it'd be really cool, and would blow the socks off kids. And so that's like a genuine care that goes beyond, just a job, and goes beyond just a company. And it's something that, I think is a contributor to the world. Like, how are you going to make an impact in the world itself, so that when you move on, it's a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that's very important. Um, because we all have a choice. We can do so many things. You want to know that the thing that you're doing is having an impact, not just for personal development, but for, for the impact of those around us. I really agree with that. Uh, so you made an aside there, which I think is important. So let's say you have a team of people and they're coming up with ideas, and sometimes something isn't even an idea of a team necessarily, but it breaks, and that it's an accidental win, and it ends up being very successful. How do you recognize that it's a success? How do you capture the baby from the bathwater?
uh, it was it really was in the kids. You'd see their delight. um like, it would be explosive right away. I mean, we always had there's a very quick feedback loop oftentimes, and so you discover these things very quickly, which is really cool. Like, so two examples of like some accidental things that happened that were like mind blowing, that were fun, was, we would often, on Wednesdays is when we would deploy our content, and then Thursday is when it would go live. Well, we deployed our content, and I had accidentally left a little trigger. And these triggers are invisible, but it was a trigger for a box of hats that would give the kids a free hat. And there was supposed to be a, like, I think it was a treasure box or something like that. What's like with the was supposed to be the artwork that was supposed to be in that room, and then you'd walk up to the box, and then you'd get a free hat. Well, the artwork was not there. That was hidden, but the trigger was there, right? So these kids are like walking along with their little penguin, and they walk across the trigger, and all of a sudden they're rewarded with this hat. And th- of course they just freaked out, right? They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I just got a free hat. And of course then they chat and they tell everybody else. And I just remember, like, in that moment, first off, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe I screwed up. I left that, trigger in there and all that stuff. But then it quickly turned into this like really fun thing where the kids are like, they're telling each other. Now it's this big discovery, and it was this fun thing. So that actually turned into, we would do that often. Then we would hide these little triggers, and every month there was like an online party, in and everyone had like a different theme, but we'd hide things then. So they would have to like literally take their penguin and walk like inch by inch over the entire island to find where a hidden trigger was. And they would do it like, and it would be funny because they would find these things like within seconds. Um, so so that was kind of fun for us, and it was always fun for them. So you got that feedback, and that's where like a little mistake turned into something that we could do on a regular basis. That was fun for them. Another fun, I mean, it wasn't like a big um, discovery or accident necessarily, but we had this like,
But just wait
yeah.
before you go on to the next one. I'm so curious. So when you said you could like, I mean, that sounds like awesome. And maybe you guys were like inventing Easter eggs. Now they're a thing, but at the time maybe it wasn't such a thing. And so what how was it uh that you were able to quantify the reaction? Like how do you measure that and how could you bring it back to the team?
um well, the measurement was by pure observation, right? I mean, we see the game live, and we'd be in there, and we'd be playing, but we'd also get feedback right away. So there was a number of like forums and bulletin boards, that the kids would all be involved in, and they would post like anything and everything about the game. Anytime we launched anything, they would have full breakdowns, walkthroughs of absolute, and it would be like literally within, if it was a big party, it'd be able to full walkthrough within a few hours. Like, it was crazy how fast they could consume. We'd spend like a month building something, and within less than an hour, they've consumed all of it. But we would always like release anything, and we'd watch those. We'd watch them, get that feedback right away. We would compile it, so that everybody could read what the feedback was, so that we would know very quickly how the kids are taking it, and what they like, what they dislike, and then kind of learn from that. Of course, in later years we actually got more like metrics on that, and we could actually measure things like that, and we would actually do full on breakdowns of everything we released. Top comments on it, and or things like how many times, how many, of our, like, what percentage of the kids actually got one specific item, what was the most popular item, because we would release like, clothing, in like, we release catalogs and release new clothing for their penguins and all that stuff, and we would actually monitor, okay, which ones were, you know purchase the most, and that sort of thing. So it then help inform, okay, well, we need to do more things like that, or we release this one and only two people actually ever got it, so nobody's interested in that. So so in the early days we didn't have that, but we'd watch very carefully in forums, and then of course customer support kids would write in, with theirs, and we try to compile that and then pass that around to the company. So it was a kind of a good breakdown of things.
So when you were, you know, there and there must have been a really close relationship between the people who were in support and the people who were designing and developing the game. Because for that sort of feedback loop to go, it's not because you observed it, you created a report, and then you handed it off to somebody who then reads it. And there must have been conversations that were just happening.
Mhm. Yeah, no, there was it. So it was always like a company wide thing. Like it wasn't, oh, there's support over there, and there's, they were eventually, like, we had two separate floors, so development was on one floor, and then support was another. I mean, I think that was probably the biggest separation between the two. But um, we would actually do, if we were working on anything, we would always do previews to the customer support team, showing what we're building, and also even getting some early feedback from them. They're giving us feedback on, what's the response from kids, what were the top things, what were some issues. So it was always like this feedback loop. Eventually, we had a common area, and we would, two big screens, and every 2 weeks we'd actually do like a full breakdown of, 'cause at that time we had multiple teams working on multiple things all at once, and each team actually had their own name, and some teams even made their own logo, and for their team. And but we would present early concepts, like concept drawings, all the way through to, like, as we were working on things, everybody would get like a full breakdown of, hey, that, we planned out this thing, and this is what's going to happen. Nothing's been drawn yet, but this is what we're going to do. And then, 2 weeks later, you see, oh, all this stuff's been drawn. Oh, and now all this coding's taken place. So now this game is at this certain level of development, and showing it off. At the same time, there's breakdown of those forums, and then eventually we did have social media channels, so we would take info from those, and even like right down to, kids would submit their, like, they would draw, like they would send us drawings, and stuff like that, and we would actually like view their drawings, like they'd pull out like some of the best ones, and then everybody would get to see some of the fan mail that was sent in. And I actually still have, it's great. It was sent in to me. My penguin name was Good Tea, and this kid actually drew like my avatar with how it was dressed at the time, and sent it in to me. So that was kind of a really special moment. So yeah, so it was just like everybody kind of working together, and involved with it. And actually, in the early days, we one of the requirements is, if you were brought on, if you were on the production team, you would actually have to spend a week with customer service, and actually answering questions and getting used to that, what's going on in there. And I think that's actually really, really important, because it sets the frame right. So this is who you were building with, and who you're building for. So
Yeah, that is really cool. Really, really awesome. And then, so now, what did you do? So why did you leave Disney, and what did you do after?
well, I left not on my own merit, but they were doing company um, cutbacks at the time, and so I ended up being on the cut list, and so that's how my career with Disney ended, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, from there, I kind of just I took a break, and I did a few things. Um, tried to start a business, doing shoreline cleanup, and bought a boat. And unfortunately, with starting that business, that it was very, like, you had 3 months of the year to actually um, make hay, so to speak. And by the time we got all of our licensing and all of that, everything in place, we only had a month left. So didn't work out the way we planned, unfortunately, but it was still fun. Learned a number of things, and how difficult it can actually be to start a business. And also got into doing renovations. We'd do the painted floors, and we'd set up custom built shelving in these garages, basically turning them into a man cave. And yeah, so that was fun. and I kind of took,
I love that sort of thing.
yeah.
That's definitely on my bucket list. I would like to, work on my garage and do some things. But one of the challenges I have with my garage is it's on a bit of a slope.
Mm.
The way they poured that slab, it's a little bit too sloped for a garage. So I'm thinking at some point I might do a full, like, um, yeah, it's a big job, but
Well, there's nothing like having
anyways,
a garage like fully organized and it just looks clean. Like,
yes.
you got that floor that you can pretty much like eat off of, and
I that just makes me so happy inside thinking about it.
yeah.
That- yeah, that's pretty cool. So then what did you do?
Um, as far as, well, that kind of didn't really end for me, but I kind of put it to the side, and I'd been involved with my own, like trying to start up my own companies, and in the difficulty of that, and learning a lot about sales. But the challenge was always leads, bringing those leads in. We had actually moved, um, and so I took the time. I think I took well, not quite 3 months, but I just took. I'm like, okay, I got really nothing, a whole lot going on. I got the time, so took those 3 months just completely do a renovation on our house and rebuild the kitchen and do all the flooring, repaint the entire house, et cetera, et cetera. So that was kind of fun. But I was thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do from here though? Like I can't, spend my lifetime just renovating a house. Uh, and I'd done a lot of studying on sales and the sales process, and it's funny because it was literally not something I thought I'd ever really want to get into, but I'd be walking around, and because we're doing a renovation, we're constantly going to all these stores and looking for products and all that stuff. And I was really frustrated at every time we went into these stores, these salespeople, in my opinion, were horrible. Like they just, there was no personality. There was no, I don't know. They just didn't seem to want to get to. Everybody just wanted to close you, right? Sell you something, and then on your way. And then I remember turning to my wife, going, I think I could do this better than they do. so, um, so that was kind of the
That's how it
thing.
starts, right? You experience the
Yeah,
pain, and then your brain starts going around and solving the
yeah.
problem.
So that was kind of like the whole catalyst of that. Okay, I'm gonna do this, and then of course a good friend of mine let me know about Street Text, and that they were looking for salespeople. So I thought, well, hey, isn't that convenient? Why don't I why don't I reach out to them and see what this is all about?
Yeah. So what was your first thoughts when you saw Street Text? Because so was Dave Durant. He's a mutual friend of ours. Nice guy, good guy. So what was your first thoughts when you checked out the company and you saw what was happening? And
Well, first off, I mean, obviously, being small startup, that always appeals to me, just because I I like that. I like that flavor of things where everybody's kind of involved, and there's just something about it. But the other thing I saw was in the product itself. So having dipped my toes into entrepreneurship, into creating businesses, um, and being familiar with that, the number one challenge, like if you're starting a business, and even if you're keeping a business going, was where am I going to get my customers from? Like, how am I going to get them? And traditional methods are always, the cold call, which nobody really wants to do, or door knocking, or and you can do those things, but it's hard, and that was a big thing to me when I looked at the product. I looked at Street Text. I'm like, oh wow, like here's a way that solves that problem. Where's my next customer coming from? It generates leads, and um, I'm very much a huge proponent of business, of small business specifically. I think it makes the world go round. Um, and and I applaud anybody who, has a business and is trying to make it work, because it's not easy. Um, but here I saw something that could help the average person really take their business to another level, and that is really what really appealed to me, to really benefiting, again, bringing it, like, what's your impact going to be in the world, and seeing that opportunity, that here's something that can potentially get a business more customers, and then when they have more customers, they have more business, they have more profit, their your lifestyle improves, and they as well then have a greater impact in the world, and it's kind of just this ripple effect. So um, and so it kind of aligned with my values at the time, and even still, of course, to this day, but where we can really help other people, by making, so we can make an impact on other people, and they can also impact the world, and it's a so it's a good thing.
It is very cool when so one of the you get to know um the street text clients very well personally, and you start to we don't start you get excited when you find out they met someone new, because you know in your heart that they're going to get served really well.
Hmm.
And I think that is such a rewarding thing, because uh, I'm a big believer in relationship business. I feel that it does the world good service simply by having more people connected and in relationship with one another. There's a really interesting stat fact, uh, that if you take an introvert and you take an introvert obviously prefers to be around fewer people, and extrovert prefers to be around more people. That's one of the big differences. But both introverts and extroverts are happier after being around people, no matter the amount of people, and that includes introverts.
Hmm.
So they might be unhappy to go into it. Maybe they're like uncomfortable during it, but they actually leave happier. So there's and it sounds like Club Penguin was about that too. It was about creating a place for kids to connect and interact with in a healthy way, because they don't even know their own boundaries at that age, uh, and Street Text is very much in trying to create relationships and connect people, but so that they turn into real world connections, not just
Hmm.
stuck online. Um, and I think that's like, to me, that's something worth fighting for, is real world relationships
Yeah.
in business. Now, so you jump into sales, and you know this is a new area for you, a new field. What's going through your mind?
What am I doing? I mean, my background is like, you know, so varied, but engineering, illustration, and game design, video game design. So I'm stepping into something that um, is in many ways very foreign. Um, but I also had that feeling. I'm like, well, I can do this. Like, it can't be that hard, right? Like, so and I think that's probably, like, that's just part of who I am. I'm always wanting to try something new, um, and give it a go and see what happens. And so yeah, so that was it. Very much was like, okay, what am I doing? This is crazy. Um, but the thing is that I caught vision of what the company's doing, right? Um, and so it's when that's the big thing too. Like, especially like from a sales perspective, if you have confidence in what you're selling, it's not a hard thing to do. It really isn't. And so that was how I took it. And I'm like, we have X number of people that are interested. It's not a big deal for me to give them a phone call out of the blue, and and you know see what they're interested in, because they've expressed it. And so how can we serve them? How can we get them to that next level of really understanding, what the product can do, and how it can benefit them. And then it just serve, right? And that to me was is the bigger thing. You just serve. Like, I'm here to serve you. You wanted some information. I'm going to give you some information. What more do you need? Um, and that people catch on to, when they sense that you're just there to help them. That's all, right? And barriers go down. They love that. You can build that relationship with them. Again, it is building relationships. So what can you notice about them? What do you hear them say? What do they, are you okay with just maybe just talking about anything but your product that you have, and just having a little um, chat, because people do want to feel valued. They want to feel like they do have a place in this world, and if you can give that to them in a moment, they will listen to what you have to say. They can sense that, and it's genuine. So that bringing it back to that relationship, I think it's vitally important.
Yeah. And you were like a duck in water when you joined Street Text, because not only did you quickly become, you were obviously really good with people. You are very good with people. You quickly became like one of our foremost product experts, not just of Street Text, but of Facebook. All of a sudden, you had such deep knowledge of Facebook ads and what worked, what didn't work. You so amongst the team, yourself, Logan, you guys were figuring out, okay, this is having a lot of traction over here. Maybe we should try this. Have we tried consider doing a split test? What is a split test? And then really, yeah, figuring out a lot of what became over the last few years the Street Text that is to Street Text today. And as a result, you then you took on even more of the product role, and now you're leading that in a really big way. What would be, if someone's listening and they're thinking about, okay, you know what, that actually what you communicated a little earlier on, which is getting leads for my business through Facebook. That's something I'm really interested in. What would be some recommendations if they, especially if they've tried Facebook in the past, or they tried Facebook in the last year and a half when it was kind of challenging? So Facebook's improved a lot. If you've been using Street Text, one thing we can say as a fact is we actually kept one of the proudest things I think we can say as a team is we kept the performance of all of our customers' ads incredibly strong. In fact, at par, if not better than it was before iOS 14 in 2021, and all the way till today, which is truly a feat. And Troy, who we're talking with here, was a major piece of that. Figuring out domain verification, figuring out new ways of connecting accounts, all sorts of things. So make sure we were optimized in a way that was giving data back to Facebook. So with that said, what would be some recommendations that you would have for someone, just from abroad to start, and then maybe we'll dive a little bit deeper into it.
Well, Facebook lead generation. I mean, the great thing is that, of course, we make it easy, but it's still top of funnel leads, and that's the biggest thing that I would like to get across to people, is that you have to be patient with it. Um, this was a stat that was I actually just learned yesterday. Um, it's a really good one. But when people were polled, only 2% of people said that they would do business with somebody they had just met.
2%.
Right, 2%. Right, which actually is, I thought was, um, quite honest, a little high. But when you take a look at Facebook lead generation and you throw an ad out there and somebody clicks on it and they leave their info because they want a home evaluation or a list of properties that they might be, list of pools with a home in their area. Um, those people, I mean, they've just met you. I would even say they haven't even just met you yet,
Yeah, it's
because they
before.
haven't interacted with you. So it's way before that. So if you take that and go and think about it, you go, okay, well, 2% of people will do business with somebody they've just met. Well, if I haven't even met them yet, then it's not even 2%, right? So you like your primary goal then needs to be, how am I going, how are we going to meet? What is going to be my first impression when we do meet? After we meet, how am I going to improve? We were talking about relationship. How am I going to improve that relationship? How I'm going to add to it? And if you, the best way that you can improve any relationship is you give, right? You provide value. You bring something to the table, right? You can't take and expect a relationship to improve, right? So you nurture on that, and if you really take that, if you take that approach, um, the opportunity will exponentially grow with online lead generation.
What's the percentage of people
And
who would work with someone? Like, how much time does it take before that percentage increases?
oh gosh, I mean, you could use the rule of seven, really. Um, how many touches are you going to have, and then what's the quality of that touch, right? What is that interaction? Um, because is there a face behind this person? How can you express that? And we've talked about within if you've been with Street Text any time, Marcus would always say, hey, you got to get video in there, and you got to get that out there, because then they see your tonality, and you see, and it's very true, right? At the least, have like a little profile image in your email if they see your email, because then it's like, oh, well, that's Jonathan. That's what he looks like, right? You go from this, because the minute you can start bringing that personality in there, bringing it humanizes everything, right? And a lot of like what we tend to do can be very cold. And if you warm that up, if you put yourself out there as, hey, I'm just a normal person with likes and dislikes and hobbies and maybe a family, and I like dogs and hate cats, or whatever that is, um, then people see you as a human. Then those barriers go down, and they go, well, this is just a person who has a business, and I see that they're very good at it, and yeah, maybe I'll give them a shot.
Fun note on the
um,
cat side. So Troy's in Costa Rica, and in you moved there a couple years ago, and it's a beautiful place, but they happen to have a devil cat. Troy had a wild little puma show up in his backyard. He sent the photo to us, and I was like, "That looks like a devil cat," and it's literally named.
yeah,
It's almost named that. I forgot what it's called, but
Jaguar Undi.
Jaguarundi. But the name like means devil cat. Um,
Yeah.
so that, um, so the uh, so here's another like interesting stat, and I'm trying to reconcile this as I'm listening to this. Uh, there's a couple things. Number one is we know that NAR knows, like for real estate agents, 70% of people work with the first agent they meet. So they might 2% might say they'll work with the first person they meet, but 70% end up working with the first person they meet. So how do you move that line from because what people say and what people do are not always the same thing. And so how do you move that line from they haven't even just met you because they opted in for something through lead generation. So now you have, they've given you their information in exchange for value, and you've got a value relationship, but you don't have I've met you now relationship. So how do you move that needle faster with Facebook ads?
Well, it comes after the ad, the initial ad. Obviously, it's going to be in your follow up campaign. It's going to be in what you do. Are you sending stuff through the mail? Are you like, how are you reaching out to start building that? And I would say more and more and more now, it is in retargeting, right? So somebody's opted in, but now they continually see ads from you, but they're value add, right? They're just constant value. So you're top of mind, you're providing value, you seem very knowledgeable. if you can couple video ads in there, then they're seeing you if you're comfortable with that. Um, and that's kind of like where they're starting to see you all over the place. So you can actually start to build. It's really interesting
So
because
they're getting to know you. At this point, they're seeing you everywhere.
exactly,
They're starting to know
yeah,
you.
and I think like especially if you put a lot of your own personality in there, like in what you do,
Because then they start to
because
like you.
exactly, exactly. It's like even like watching a movie. Like you don't know this person, but you start to actually care for that character that's on screen, because you're getting to know them. You're getting to know their personality. You're getting to know a little bit about them, and so then it's just a natural human thing that you actually start to care. That's just how we're wired, and so the more of you can put out there in a very um, real, like, kind of real and raw way. This is just me. I'm a normal person. You're not trying to be a persona of big man on the campus, but just I'm here to genuinely serve you. And I have a knowledge base. If it's real estate, I know real estate, and these are some of the things I know. Um, and if your personality shines through, um, I think of it this way. Um, if I was to go view homes, who would I want to do it with? Right? Do I feel comfortable going around town to view homes with you? Right? Would I even feel
I
comfortable for you to drive in the car with you? Right? Like,
Yes. I love the idea. It's like if someone were and it works both ways. It's like if you were interviewing someone, you ask yourself, would I wanna be stuck on an 8-hour airplane flight beside this person? Well, would they wanna be stuck on an 8-hour airplane flight beside you? And that's a good question to ask. Like, how am I coming across? Because, is this really helpful? Is it interesting? Is it likable? Is it fun? Is it valuable? Um, or is it really one-sided? And that's a really important question to ask. So now you're talking about developing the know, you're even adding in the like. How do you then um add the demand? So you got the demand generation, that's really what it is. Now you need the demand capture. Where do you get the people to then say, okay, this is someone I'm booking an appointment with? How do you get from, okay, I see your ads on remarketing, to I booked an appointment with you?
um, you got to provide the ask. you, but do it in a way that isn't is that they want to do it, right? There's I think there's language you can use. Um, Again, what's going to be the value, right? Why would they want to book in with you? Um, what's going to come about from that, and it all depends on what that journey is, and what how you've interacted, and where that is. Um, but I think to genuinely be interested, right? So, like, you want to get to know them, right? So you've been working on them getting to know you, but if you genuinely want to get to know them in a way that has nothing to do um, with a sale, right? So we're again developing a relationship. We're developing a two-way relationship now. Um, so you ask those questions, get friendly with those questions. Obviously, if you don't know them too deeply, you don't want to get too in the weeds. Um, but there are those things that you can actually start to probe, and start to wonder. And it can even be, you can use real estate as the catalyst for that. But there are questions where you can get a conversation started that can be really, really interesting, right? So, tell me, love to get to know more about, you know love to get to learn more about you. Tell me what you love most about your home. So we're not talking about selling a home, we're not talking about anything, we're just going, you have a house, what do you like most about it? Everybody's going to have something they like about their home, but um, or maybe they don't, and they'll tell you. They're like, I hate my home. That's why I want to sell. So,
Water's coming through the
um,
roof, the door's falling down. It's time to move.
ex-
Yeah.
exactly, and that and then you can dive into those things. So tell me, maybe oh, I really like my kitchen. Oh, that's great. Tell me more about that. What do you really like about your kitchen? Oh, well, it's the countertop that we put in. I just really love this countertop, or et cetera, et cetera. Right. So you're genuinely interested um, in them, and people open up, and so and you got that two way. Right. So you're developing that relationship where I actually really care. Let's find out what your interests are, so anyway,
So
can go
from
on
what
about
I've
that
heard
for a
from
while.
what you said is that Facebook ads is an incredibly powerful way to really fill the funnel. And now this is where you got to put a little bit of your marketing hat on, because you're realizing I'm filling the funnel, but it's my responsibility to get them from the top of the funnel all the way down to the bottom of the funnel where they're now working with me. And in the middle of that journey, you need to have really built your know, that like, and that trust. And the best way to create the know is through remarketing. So as you and I both know, remarketing can be incredibly inexpensive and really easy way of staying front and center of these people. So you're top of mind, so that you don't go out of mind. So if they are in the journey of looking to work with somebody, you're the person who now has risen to the top. And then the key there is layering in likability. So likability is going to be your personality that's in the content, but also, if you're really good at like one-on-one relationships with people, adding them to your Facebook as a Facebook friend. Maybe you've had a conversation with them and just now you friend with them. They don't have to be liking or commenting on every one of your posts, but then they get to see you in their feed. And so because they see you, they see your posts with your family, they see your posts where you're talking about some of the things you value, maybe your sports team, and maybe they get to see how you treat your clients. And and they start to like you, and they start to think to themselves, man, this is an individual who, like you said, I could see being really fun to go and do business with. And then the art is making sure you have got call to actions or asks in the conversations or in the ads, the remarketing ads or the follow up or the maybe you're doing mail outs, whatever your communication style is that you're having with this person. Make sure you're communicating an ask so that they don't just become your best friend, they become your best client, so that they actually say to themselves, okay, yeah, not only was I thinking about buying or selling or getting into the market or doing this financial decision or making this or purchasing this app, they're actually thinking, oh, I'm going to choose you. Thanks for that reminder. Yes, let's have a conversation and a consultation over that. And now you're taking it further. So that is a really that's a really good breakdown of if you can understand that, just by having that knowledge, you'll already be, I'd say, like 99 times further ahead than most people getting into Facebook ads. Because now you have a really good understanding of what it's going to take and to be successful with it. So now, if you were to maybe give like two or three tips on Facebook ads themselves, what would you tell people to look at when they are comparing their ad? Like, how can you tell if an ad's working or not? That's a question I get all the time.
Whether it's working or not, is it generating leads? Um, I mean, well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's breaking down your metrics, and if it's a lead generation ad, is it bringing in leads? What is your cost to acquire that lead? Um, that's why we, test, don't guess, right? Like doing a split test is really vitally important. We discovered that, right? That if you rely on Facebook's algorithm, you can roll the dice, right? So don't roll the dice. do a split test, and because Facebook is, each ad you're running, it's getting a different, slightly different audience, and you don't know. If I was to run out one ad, um, maybe Facebook got it right, maybe Facebook didn't get it right. Um, so how would I know otherwise? So I'm going to load the dice in my favor. I'm going to launch three. I'm going to compare the results. In a 24 48 hour period. Um, the other thing too is ads that capture their attention. So things that are familiar to you, things that are going to bring you in. We talk about using landmarks. We talk about using street signs. We talk about, like, there's and it can be anything like that, right? Maybe it's your favorite sports team stadium. Those things, like, are what grabs people's attention. Um, I, I shy away from any ads that look extremely like an ad. You know, um, if it can look a little bit more native, like it actually belongs on Facebook, you're going to pay attention to it and thinking, more that it's a post.
Yeah, you're cutting
So
past the ad blindness.
exactly. I mean, we've all gotten really good at it, right? We're very good at ignoring ads because they're all over the place, right? And you're like, oh, it's in my peripheral vision. But there's, sometimes there's just some things that capture our attention. Um, even sometimes it'd just be a little bit surprising with it. A funny image can be, that you just look at it and you smirk, and then now that you're looking at it, you're reading what the copy is, and now you see what the offer is, and now you're interested that way. So those are like little things that you can do to find an ad that will work, but very much looking at your ad performance and knowing what that is. Also, and then also testing it out, because every market is different, right? And I think the mistake that a lot of people make um, is that they want to compare their results to somebody else's results in another market when they're two entirely different beasts. Um, and so that's why, test for yourself, see what it's like in your market, run other ads, and if you continue to get very similar performance, well, that's just what your performance is in your market, and that's okay. That's
That's your
so it gives you that.
baseline, yeah. And now
Mhm.
now you have a number that you can actually work with, and as long as it's ROI positive, that's a number
Yeah.
you can keep. It's literally something it's printing you money, because this is the way I think about it, and you can share what you think about this, is that it's if you it doesn't matter what your conversion rate is. It could be 1%, it could be 14%. And I've heard both. It could be less than 1%. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that your ROI makes sense. And so what that means is, if you are generating if you're spending, let's say, $500 in a month on ads, but from that spend that you're making um, between 2.5 to 4x of that spend. Um, that's just a minimum. So if you're making 2.5 to 4x of that spend, so for every $500 you're spending, you're making $1,500 to $2,000. Well, that is great ROI. That is fantastic ROI. That's green ROI. Now, in some industries, like real estate, your ROI is actually going to be closer to 15 times. So if you're spending $500, you're actually going to be making something closer to 5,000 to 6,000 or even more on that spend. And what that tells you is, and you can actually go down all the way down to $2,500 or less, um, because you have your ROI. It's just, but you need to know what that number is, and you need to pay attention to that number, because that's much more important than your conversion rate. Because if you are able to capture people and fill your funnel, and you can see is coming out on the other side, now that's something you can keep reinvesting, and it's really, really scalable. It's something that you can actually, okay, I'm going to put more in, I'm going to run more ads, and I can get more out as a result. So what's my goal? I'll just work backwards from there. And as long as as long as it's always green, as long as it's always more than 2x, 2.5x, I'm good as far as my ROI. And I think that's what people forget. They lose track of that. They start worrying about, well, how much money do you spend a day on your ads? Or what's your lead conversion rate? What my lead conversion rate is X. Or are you running listing ads, or are you running a different kind of ad? And but none of those things, when you put it in perspective of, well, what's my actual output? That changes the whole conversation. And I think part of it is because um, is because until you do get your first ROI, you're just maybe not sure. And so you're kind of, you're just looking at your, it's almost like you other people in the class. You're like, what did you write as your answer for for this one? Because I'm still learning, and that's okay. And I'm just trying to get a feel from the room that I'm on the right track. And the reality is you are on the right track. And as you said, when you get from top of funnel, some of those clients, especially bigger transactions, smaller transactions, they're going to be able to transact right away. But bigger transactions, you could be taking, a while before you see that first deal, because especially if your budget is small to begin with, to attract people, because you're getting, a smaller subset, and that's totally normal. But the second you get that first ROI, now you have a number, you have a baseline, and you can look at it, you can work off it. And so it's like any good initiative. Give yourself a minimum, and I say a minimum of 2 quarters. Say, okay, it's pretend you're managing someone else. What would you say if you were to hire someone to do your SEO or whatever else you do? You say, okay, in 2 quarters, here's what the goal is. Is that fair? Okay, that's a fair goal. I'll give you two quarters to try to achieve that goal. And then after 2 quarters, you look at the goal and you say, okay, either the goal was hit or wasn't hit. And we need to have a conversation at this point as to what happened. Was it that it still is possible and we can see the roadmaps panning out? Or is it that we're so far off that we need to change the strategy? So give yourself a minimum of 2 quarters. And this is true with Facebook ads. Give yourself a minimum of 2 quarters, because that will give you the data you need to be able to say, okay, is this a good strategy? And then, as you were talking about earlier, it becomes exponential really, really fast, because all of a sudden, all the investment you've done 2 quarters ago starts showing up the fourth, like the third quarter, the fourth quarter, the fifth quarter, and it keeps building on, because now you have other months you've been advertising, and that just, like, the funnel is just growing. And that's when you see the big numbers. But people sometimes look at the big numbers and they think, how do I get there? How come that person over there is doing well? It's because they started very small.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've seen that time and time again. There a lot of people compare themselves to others, but they don't know the whole backstory behind how that person actually got to where they're at. I mean, they didn't just arrive that day.
Just
you
woke
know,
up,
just
stretched their
yeah,
arms, and 30 clients fell in their lap.
yeah, exactly. It's like watching somebody, hit a home run. Well, how many times did they swing that bat before they ever hit a home run, right?
Yes, good
And
point.
that's usually that
I
that backstory
remember,
that we don't see.
yeah, like being a kid and like just in standing in the fields of the prairies, throwing the ball in the air and swinging and missing, throwing it in the air,
Yeah.
swinging and missing. I probably did that hundreds of times. Yeah,
But you kept at it, and you eventually, you eventually connect, and then you connect once, and then, you may miss a couple more times, and then you connect twice, and then,
yeah,
eventually you'll be consistent. You'll connect every single time. But I think people need to have a lot more patience with themselves. Sometimes I think we put greater expectations on ourselves. I know I'm guilty of that. Um, but that's why it's important, and to take that. And yeah, it's funny, you kind of you touched on it a little bit, but it's every time I hear somebody have success, uh, I in our mastermind or something, I actually start to count in my head how long it was going to take before the very next question that's going to get asked. And almost 100% of the time it is, what ad did you run?
now I would say,
And
and knowing what we know about, things, we might say, okay, well, that's, it's not necessarily going to be the most helpful question based on what you're trying to answer. But I would say this: the kind of ad you run actually does matter for the top of funnel, because some ads are more top of funnel than others. Some ads are actually kind of like middle of the funnel. And so if you find a sweet spot where you've got a a call to action and an offer that's aligning with someone who's not at the very, very, very top of that funnel, but it's kind of like one step or two steps down in the rung, but you're able to
Hmm.
get leads for a really good price as a result from Facebook, that's like a ding, 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 ding formula. And so there are certain ads, there are certain kinds of campaigns that we know of that we'll recommend to go run because we'll say that one is going to get you a lot further because you've already started at the pre just met versus,
Hmm.
I am just browsing. That's too far out, or I haven't even made a decision yet. Like I'm not even in a decision. That's too far. So I do want to qualify that, which is it's not always a bad thing to ask what ad is someone running, if you can see that their pipeline is shorter. But backing it up and just saying, okay, well, if your pipeline's actually not shorter, then it's really not the right question. The real question is, okay, how are you introducing yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's break it down. What did you do after the lead came in? Yeah. So, um, yeah, I mean, and like in real estate, the other thing to always be to remind yourself is that if you're running a seller ad, the average seller takes 6 to 12 months to even decide to sell their home,
Yeah, it's wild.
right? So, and you don't know where you are in that decision making process. So, I mean, the best place to be in that decision making process is on day one, right? Because I look at it, I'm like, okay, now your job is you've got 6 to 12 months to warm that person up so that when they make the decision, they're making it with you, right? And so that you go, okay. And I think if you really think about it that way, it takes a lot of that pressure off. You don't have to wow them today. I've got 6 to 12 months to impress them, to date them, build this relationship.
For them to get to know
Um,
me. There's no urgency that I might feel urgency on my part because I want to fill the hopper, but there's no urgency in having them make that decision because they're not going to be choosing someone else right now either. And so
mhm,
I
exactly.
have time for them to get to know me. And I think that's a really good point. And if you always think about it from your like, okay, well, what's the kind of person that I start following? It usually is a little bit from the distance at first. And then after a while, you've seen them on Facebook, you've seen their posts, and they're so consistent. And you're like, that's the kind of person. Well, guess what happens? The email thread starts getting longer, the text conversations get more frequent. And before long, you're in person, you're having coffee, and you're now talking about that next deal. And
Yeah.
12 months goes by like that. It's so fast.
Hmm.
It really does.
Hmm. Yeah. And and that's the thing too. And the more you grow your database, you know, the more likelihood you're going to have. That's why it's exponential, right? Your database just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So the pool of potential business grows and grows and grows. And I always equate it with this is all all at the same time you yourself are improving, right? So the leads that you might generate today are getting the experience that you're giving them today. But the leads that you generate 6 months from now, 12 months from now, are going to get even more improved
Version of
version of you.
you
Yeah.
because you've
Yeah.
improved.
And exactly. And so if you look at that and you're always wanting to improve, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to be 1% better today. I'm going to tweak this, or I'm going to change the verbiage on this, or what can I learn from somebody else? And you don't have to go and tragically, or um,
Tragic story.
um, tragically, um, drastically is what I'm looking for. Change everything like overnight, right? So go, oh, it's all wrong, and I have to change this all, right? It's just like, okay, usually it's like minor little things here and there, and in what you say and but
It's so true though. And what's really cool is it really does add up. So because it's an automation, you change one email today, guess what? The next day you change a second email. Now you've changed two emails. On the third day you change a
mhm,
third email. That's really easy. I can edit an email once a day. If you did that
yeah,
365 days in a row, you'd have 365 awesome emails getting sent out in your automations without
mhm,
having really worked very hard. And that is, if you start to understand the compound effect, you start to really, really understand the impact this can have. And there's one other thing I think that's worth saying is that there's a stage of one's business where you might think, okay, this is the point of time where I need to implement this. Um, if you are getting into any kind of business, you need to have set aside a marketing budget. And that budget, maybe it will start for free. Maybe it's okay, my budget is my time because that's all I have. I don't have any clients yet. That's fine. But in my marketing budget, I have time. So I should allocate time block out of my calendar. This is how much time I'm going to spend marketing. It could be posts I create on social, it could be videos I create, reels I create, also events I put together. Maybe I'm inviting people over. Maybe I'm doing, again, these can all be low cost ideas. I go door knocking. I go to canvas neighborhoods. I drop off flyers. This is my marketing budget. Of course, that costs a little bit more money because you got print material and stuff. But very quickly, you realize that that much time, it starts to chew a lot of time out of your day. And now you're going to be working with clients. So if you're spending $500 a month on Facebook ads, it's actually really, really cheap. That's really cheap considering the number of people, the impressions you will have. It starts to add up in thousands, hundreds of thousands by the end of the year. And these are people who are now seeing you frequently. So just think about driving past a billboard every single day. That's great. That they get a lot of, you get a lot of visual reinforcement. So you start to really get to know who that is. Well, that's what Facebook's doing for you. Plus, what it's also adding on is it's adding the call to action. So it's not just a billboard, but it's something that's convenient for somebody to take action on in the moment. They click a button, they fill out a form, they get something back as a result. Great. That gives them a little dopamine happiness. They got what they asked for. And then you now have an opportunity and somebody in your pipeline who you get to remarket with other campaigns, other offers. Again, you're building your know and that like and that trust over time. And it's such a small investment, but then becomes just a marketing expense that you know and you manage and you make sure is just pre-allocated because it'll only grow your business over time. The second you stop marketing, you're it's like you're cutting the lifeblood from a business. But when you start marketing, you're generating lifeblood, and it starts to have a big impact 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the road. And it's the same. This is true for any business, and it's not like one business has to spend more. Every business has to spend money on marketing because you need to constantly be proactive at actually getting the word out so people know about you and they hear about you. And this is one of the things Facebook is so incredible good at, because not only do they get to hear about you and know you, but you can actually have a conversation there. So it's a platform for connecting. So you can build relationships, you can connect, you can ask, you can message. So it's a very, very powerful, powerful way of getting really like into market. And if someone's moving like community cities, you can turn the tap on tomorrow. What other kind of marketing is there that exists that's possible? I don't think anything. And so it's truly, truly, truly remarkable. But you got to get the mind around, okay, I got to set and allocate $500 a month no matter what. I need to have that marketing budget set out. And then that marketing budget starts to fill the pipeline right away. And now you have something to work with, but you're not just building your pipeline, you're building your brand. Because on Facebook, the two things are done simultaneously. Because when you see an ad, you see a person. When you see an ad, you see the logo, you see the business name, you see so that is really important. You got to get that dialed in. It's really, really fundamental. I think you got to understand that with Facebook. And there's one other thought I'm just kind of missing on my mind right now. But is there anything else you'd add to that, Troy?
I I mean, that is it. That's the key. Like, I mean, the reality is it's always the age old. It takes money to make money. We can't get away from that, right? My wife and I were discussing that the other day, and she brought up, she's like, "Yeah, my boss used to always say, you need to spend $5 to make 20." And it's very true, right?
And that's a 4x return,
It's yeah, and
not
that I
even
mean
10 or
that's an
15x.
investment, right? And you know, it, it's an investment in your business. It's an investment in you. Um, and yeah, I think we're all human, and it's hard to part. with those hard-earned dollars. But when you, and I think that's, you also have to look at it that way, is like, okay, if I'm going to spend this money, I'm going to do my best to make it go as far as it can, right? So, if you spend money to get X number of leads, then work those leads, right? Because they did cost you. And so, work it. Don't let it just fall to the side, and be consistent with that. And I think you need to focus on the work and not necessarily the results, because the results will come. They will, if you're genuinely working, doing everything you can at the end of the day, continuously improving, the results will come. Like, they inevitably have to come.
100%. And one of the things I think, like when we set goals, so it's like, when we're recording, this is the beginning of the year. So if you think about, 12 months out, you set a goal, you want to have a 12-month goal. A lot of times people will set a goal, but then they haven't set all the actions that need to happen to make that goal a reality. A goal is just another word for vision. That's all it is. It's an outcome. It's a vision quantified with a number. Maybe my goal is to work with a certain number of clients by the end of the year. That's a pretty common goal that you'll hear, a business minded person say, because that means something, or do a certain amount of deals. I think a much better goal is actually to set a goal on the number of activities you're going to achieve, and then break it down. Well, if I need to do that many activities by the end of the year, I need to have done, let's say I need to have done 20 of those activities a week. So now I have a goal that I will hit 20 activities a week. If I want to lose weight, I could track how much weight I've lost, but that's very depressing. Instead, if I simply track calories in and the number of steps I do, guess what? The outcome will happen because I paid attention on the things that would make it happen. And it might not happen today, and it might not happen tomorrow. It might not even happen in the time period that I set out for it, but it will happen because I'm focusing on my goal is happening. I'm hitting my targets. And I think that was very true when it comes to setting goals, is really set activities, and then the outcome will end up happening. And then the other thing I think is really important, worth mentioning, is that if you're new to lead generation, and you're like, okay, I know how to work with people, I know how to have great quality relationships with people, you might be working your leads, and there might be a bunch of people who are unresponsive. Do not delete those people. Do not throw them out, and definitely do not be rude to them if they do not respond, because they are actually watching and listening to you. They're paying attention. And sometimes it's very hard to get all the complete statistics data. You track so many open rates, you track so many of this. Well, there's a lot of opens that you aren't tracking. There's a lot of people who are watching your Facebook posts who are not liking it or commenting it. And that is your database. That is your sphere. That's your influence. And they are actually observing you. And a lot of those people end up referring you. And so you want to make sure that you treat everybody, even the non-responsive people, as if they are your best client. And so every time you communicate with that level. Troy, is there any final things you want to share on this? We kind of really dove into the lead generation side, but it's been
We
fun.
did.
I can tell I'm a little bit passionate about this.
Just a little.
Just a little.
I honestly, I think it really is, go easy, be easy on yourself. There is no magic pill, or bean, or whatever you want to call it, that's going to, you can't turn an ad on and then expect that somebody that's going to convert the very first person that comes through. It takes time, especially if you're never done top of funnel lead generation. It's a little bit foreign. It takes a bit. And I look at it this way, is, if you're dedicated to continuously improve, to focus on providing value, serving others, trying to establish a relationship, you will always win no matter what, because you're going to win at life, right? You're going to become a better person as a result. That again is inevitable. And as you improve, then everything else kind of just falls in place, right? So um, that I think is fundamentally, really really important, and so and and like I said, be go easy on yourself. You don't, first lead comes in and they don't convert, that's fine. There's going to be more leads. You got opportunity.
Yeah, that's really good. That's well said, Troy. So, Troy, I just want to say thank you so much. Really appreciate this. I've enjoyed this very much. And yeah, if someone ever reaches out to you, how can they get a hold of you?
Facebook.
There we go. Awesome. So Troy Mack on Facebook. All right, man.
Troy David Mack.
Troy
Yeah,
David Mack. Okay.
there's too many other Troy Macks out
The
there.
Costa Rica Troy Mack. Yeah.
There you go.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. This has been fun.
Anytime.
Let's go.